I didn't yell. I didn't punch a hole in the dry dock drywall, or throw my torque wrench through the glass. I just stood there in the engine bay of my own shop, watching my lead coordinator, the woman whose name was on my joint business account, hand over a forged maintenance log to the state inspector. 7 months of systematic sabotage. 3 separate offshore clients. Over 18 grand in phantom expenses routed straight to a shell company. She thought I was just the quiet engineer in greasy coveralls who only cared about diesel injectors and structural welds. She thought I'd never pull the raw telemetry logs. But what she didn't know was that 30 seconds before the inspector walked through that garage bay door, an anonymous caller handed me the master encryption key to every message she had sent for the last year. And the trap I was about to spring wouldn't just cost her her job. It was going to dismantle her entire life before sunset. It started on a Sunday afternoon that felt completely solid. The kind of shift where you think the machinery is running true and your margins are secure. Suburban Cleveland shop floors aren't built for sudden structural failure. They're built for the low hum of air compressors 2 bays over, stale gas station coffee cooling on a workbench, and pretending a technical manual is holding your attention when your mind is somewhere else. I sat at my desk in the mezzanine office with a diesel pump schematic I'd been staring at for 3 weeks, letting my eyes glaze over the same fuel injection pressure rates without processing a line. Down on the shop floor, Sarah, my wife and business partner, was stretched out on the breakroom couch, scrolling through her tablet with the effortless calm of someone who believes the overhead crane will never drop on them. The business felt steady. The marriage felt bolted down tight. Looking back, that's exactly why the impact tore through me like a snapped winch line under load. It had to shear right through the steel to get to me. My cell phone vibrated on the metal desk. Unknown caller ID. Normally, I let calls go to voicemail. Let the machine do the heavy lifting. But something made me hit the green button. Instinct. Fatigue. Or maybe the universe finally ran out of patience with the lie I was running my shop on. Daniel Vance. The voice on the line was tight, choked back, like a mechanic trying to hold a pressurized line together with raw hands. Yeah. Who's this? My name is Marcus Reed, the voice said. A heavy pause came through the speaker. I need to give you a diagnostic readout, and it's going to tear your frame apart. Down below, Sarah kept scrolling. Her boot tapped lazily against the edge of the breakroom table. She didn't have a clue. What's this regarding? I asked, keeping my voice flat and calibrated. It's about your wife, Marcus said cold. And my shop foreman, Tyler. The floor beneath my steel-toe boots didn't shake. It went completely hollow. For a split second, my lungs locked. I'm not tracking, I said, even though the internal sensors were already flashing red. They've been running an unauthorized operation behind your back, Marcus said, laying it out like a damage assessment. 7 months. I pulled the private server logs last night. My grip crushed the casing of the phone. I looked through the glass window down at Sarah. Same work fleece, same loose ponytail, same unbothered posture. But as Marcus started reading off specific dates and port locations I recognized from her regional vendor meetings, I realized Marcus wasn't just exposing an affair. He was about to read off 2 other names on that log that made my blood run ice cold. Marcus didn't deliver it in an emotional rush. He spoke in the steady, clinical tone of an auditor reading off structural defects. He listed specific hotel line items disguised as marine supply restocks. Gaps in Sarah's shop schedule I had written off as inventory runs, late client deliveries, or coffee with our accountants. Everything he said clicked together like a key turning in a deadbolt I didn't even know was locking me out of my own life. I stared down at her through the glass. The same woman I'd prepped equipment with that morning. Except now, the blueprint was corrupted. I could see a total stranger standing under her skin. I know you didn't ask for this system failure, Marcus said, his voice dropping an octave. But you deserved the raw data. How long have you had this file? I asked, my throat dry as grinding dust. Since late last night, he said. The telemetry only goes back 7 months, but the wear and tear looks much older. 7 months. Over half a year of my labor and trust hollowed out without my consent. Why make this call to me? Because I needed another guy in this wreck who wasn't lying to the underwriters. Fair enough. On the floor below, Sarah shifted on the vinyl couch, and finally looked up toward the mezzanine office. I stood by the railing, phone clamped to my ear, watching her without a single drop of expression on my face. She threw me a light, casual wave, completely relaxed, totally blind. It made something deep inside my chest lock permanently into place. "I'm sorry," Marcus added softly. "I know I just scrapped your whole operation." He hadn't scrapped my day. He'd sheared my entire life straight down the center line. "Appreciate the call," I said and hung up. The silence that hit the office was thin, high pressure, dangerous. Sarah blinked up at me through the glass, calling out, "Who was that, honey? Parts supplier?" Her tone was casual, the exact tone she used to ask if we needed more shop rags. I looked at her for 10 solid seconds. Not at the partner I married, but at the liability she had chosen to become. My phone buzzed in my palm. A text from Marcus. "I'm emailing you the full investigative folder. It's heavy. I'm sorry." Attached was a contact line. He wanted my private email. I typed it back with fingers that were completely steady. Not from fear, but from the cold surge of adrenaline hitting my system like hydraulic fluid under load. When I hit send, my inbox pinged instantly. Subject: Master Evidence File, Vance Marine. I didn't open it immediately. I sat there in the quiet office, letting the weight of it settle. Then a second text from Marcus flashed on the screen. "Daniel, you need to brace yourself. It's not just Tyler. The server logs show at least 2 other fleet contractors. 2 more men. 3 total. 7 months with one, weeks or months with the others." All while she sat across from me at the dinner table talking about shop expansion. My reply was 5 words. "Send every single raw file." I stood up slowly, walked down the metal stairs, and stepped onto the shop floor. Sarah turned her head, noticing something off. "You look stiff, Daniel. Everything okay?" "Fine," I said. Not angry, not broken. Just operational in a way I hadn't been in years. I walked past her toward the back workbench, pulling up the file on my rugged shop tablet. But as the first PDF opened, I didn't just see hotel receipts or text messages. The top document was a set of bank transfers that proved Sarah had been actively trying to drain my business reserves before the week was over. There's no clean way to hand someone the wreckage of the lies they built their foundation on. I walked back into the break room and stood directly over the table. Sarah looked up, tablet resting on her thigh, her brow furrowing slightly. "What's with the face?" "Tyler's business partner just called my cell," I said. The words landed like a shockwave. Her face froze halfway between a casual smile and a frown. Shock hit her first, then forced recognition, and then something behind her eyes snapped into full alarm. What?" she stammered, sitting up fast, the calm demeanor evaporating. "What are you talking about? Why would Marcus call you?" "He gave me the full diagnostic," I said, keeping my voice dead level. 7 months. The marine slips, the fake equipment runs, the nights you said you were working inventory at the dock. And he wasn't the only one. Sarah's mouth opened, then clamped shut. Panic flickered across her face like a bad ground wire. Fear, calculation, and damage control all fighting for the steering wheel at once. "He's lying," she blurted out, her voice rising an octave. "Marcus is out of his mind. Tyler told me his partner was having a breakdown. He's been paranoid for months." "Is that right?" I asked, leaning against the doorframe. She stood up fast, her hands shaking as she reached out to grab my arms. "Daniel, please. Just stop and breathe. Let's sit down in the office and talk through this. We're talking right now." Her breath hitched. She pulled her hands back slowly, like she'd just touched a red-hot exhaust manifold. What exactly did he send you?" "Dates. Timestamps. Hotel receipts billed under shop overhead. And a private investigator's log." Her knees gave out slightly. She caught herself against the edge of the break room counter. It wasn't like that. You aren't listening to me." "It was precisely like that," I said. "And Marcus brought up 2 other fleet leads. Do you want to verify those line items now, or should I open the attachments?" Sarah pressed both palms to her forehead, trying to physically force the truth back into the dark. "I was isolated," she cried out, her voice cracking. "You were always in the bay. You were working 80-hour weeks on the tugboat overhauls. I didn't know how to reach you anymore. I didn't flinch. Her excuses blew over me like wind over cold granite. This isn't about shop hours, I said quietly. This is about high-level, calculated fraud. I made a mistake, she sobbed, tears finally spilling over. I blew it, Daniel. But I never stopped loving you or this business. Don't. I cut in sharply. Don't drag that word onto this floor. It doesn't apply here. She began pacing the narrow break room like a trapped animal. Daniel, please. We can fix this. We can hire a commercial mediator. I'll give you full access to my phone. I'll resign from the logistics side. You had 7 months to come clean. She stopped moving. She looked smaller, not physically but stripped down, like the competent partner mask had peeled off and fallen to the oily concrete floor. I didn't want to destroy you, she whispered. You didn't destroy me, I said, stepping back into the corridor. You just removed yourself from the operation. She sank back onto the vinyl couch, her shoulders collapsing inward. A long, suffocating silence settled over the shop, punctured only by the steady cycle of the shop air compressor. Daniel. She whimpered, looking up with bloodshot eyes. Do you hate me? No, I replied. I don't feel a single thing for you right now, and that should scare you more than anger. Open loop number, for she thought the worst part of her day was over. She thought this was just an explosive marital blowout that would end with raised voices and sleeping on the couch. But as I walked back up to the office to print the master folder, I heard her racing upstairs behind me, completely unaware that I was about to execute a legal lockdown on every asset in the shop before the bank closed at 5. The mezzanine office felt ice cold when I sat back down in front of my twin monitors. Sarah hovered in the doorway, her arms wrapped tight around her chest, her breathing jagged and shallow. She didn't dare speak. She knew the room had transitioned into an audit. I pulled up the primary PDF package Marcus's investigator had compiled. 12 subfolders. Timestamps. GPS logs from our own fleet vehicles. Hotel receipts cross-reference with vendor invoices. I opened the first subfolder. Screenshots of text chains. I didn't look for emotional drama. I looked at operational tone. The casual, arrogant tone of two people who thought they were entirely untracked. Sarah gasped from the doorway as the images filled the large display screens. Daniel, please don't look at those. I held up one hand without looking back. She went instantly silent. I scrolled through file after file. Expense accounts used to fund weekend trips while I was pulling double shifts on commercial dock repairs. Dates where she claimed she was at regional logistics seminars, matched directly to resort stays 2 counties over. Then halfway through folder 4, I hit the text thread that cleared out whatever residual hesitation I had left. It was a screenshot from 3 months prior. Tyler had asked her if she was worried I'd catch on to the missing inventory funds. Sarah's reply was burned into my retinas. Don't worry about Daniel. He's too dense and obsessed with his machines to notice anything outside the garage. He just does what he's told. My jaw set. My pulse didn't spike. It settled into a razor-sharp freeze. Behind me, Sarah let out a strangled cry. I was venting. I was angry at you that day. He baited me into saying that. Save the deposition, I said, my voice deadpan. I kept scrolling. The private investigator's final summary was attached at the end. 42 pages detailing a systematic, multi-person operation spanning 7 months, 3 separate contractors, and thousands in misappropriated business capital. I closed the laptop lid with a quiet click. The sound echoed through the metal frame of the office. Sarah dropped to her knees right on the industrial carpet, reaching out to touch my boot. I'm so sorry, Daniel. Please. I'll sign whatever you want. I'll go to counseling. We can build it back. There's no we left on this deed, I said, stepping cleanly out of her reach. You built a secondary business behind my back. Now you get to liquidate your end of it. I reached for the desk phone and dialed our head legal counsel. But as the line started ringing, Sarah scrambled to her feet with a look of absolute desperation, and uttered a single threat about our joint business liability that she thought would force me to stay quiet. If you call a lawyer right now, Sarah hissed, her tears instantly freezing into defense mode, I'll freeze the shop's operational accounts tomorrow morning. Half of this company is in my name, Daniel. You won't be able to pay your parts vendors or meet payroll on Friday. I didn't answer her. I just listened to the desk phone ring. Vance Legal. My attorney's voice came through the speakerphone. Jim, I said calmly, looking Sarah right in the eye. I need an emergency injunction filed first thing tomorrow morning for asset dissipation and corporate fraud. I have 42 pages of forensic evidence. Sarah's mouth dropped open. The color completely drained from her skin. I'm on it, Daniel, Jim replied without hesitation. Bring the file to my office at 7 a.m. Don't touch the joint accounts tonight. Understood. I hung up. I turned back to Sarah. Pack your personal belongings from the office desk in your truck. You're off this property in 20 minutes. You can't kick me out of my own business, she yelled, her voice cracking under the panic. I can and I am, I said evenly. If you're still on this lot in 20 minutes, I'm calling the county sheriff to escort you off for commercial trespassing. Your access codes to the security gate have already been revoked. She stood there, paralyzed, realizing every escape hatch she had planned had just been welded shut. Where am I supposed to go? Not my logistics problem anymore. She backed out of the office, sobbing heavily, her boots clanking down the metal stairs. I followed her down at a distance, standing on the shop floor with my arms crossed while she stuffed her personal items into a duffel bag. At 6 p.m., my brother pulled his heavy-duty pickup into the shop driveway. I had called him 10 minutes earlier, not for emotional backup, but to serve as a neutral witness so she couldn't claim physical intimidation. Sarah carried her bag out the side door, pausing at the threshold. She turned around, her face pale and blotchy, searching my eyes for a single crack in the armor. Daniel, please, she whispered. Ikke her sinkel. Film not. Not forgiveness. Just an acknowledgement that the contract was terminated. The heavy steel door slammed shut behind her. The lock turned with a heavy mechanical snap. For the first time in 7 months, the air inside the shop felt completely clear. But getting her out of the shop was only step one. The real war was going to take place in the courtroom 48 hours later, where Sarah's attorney presented a hidden financial document that threatened to wipe out my entire life savings in a single stroke. Monday morning at 8 a.m. felt like stepping into an engine bay that had suffered a catastrophic failure. The county courthouse smelled like floor polish and old paper, the exact environment where long-term contracts go to be shredded. My attorney, Jim Harris, sat beside me with 3 thick binders spread across the oak table. Across the aisle sat Sarah and her high-priced legal representative. She was dressed in a conservative gray suit, looking subdued, trying to project the image of a remorseful, neglected partner who had simply lost her way. Her lawyer took the podium first, launching straight into a prepackaged narrative. Your Honor, what we have here is a classic case of spousal neglect. My client was pushed out of the emotional center of this marriage by a husband obsessed with his engineering firm. Her actions, while unfortunate, were the direct result of severe isolation. Jim stood up smoothly, adjusting his glasses. Your Honor, if emotional neglect involves opening a hidden corporate line of credit and charging $18,000 in luxury hotel stays and offshore rentals while my client was working 80-hour weeks, then counsel might have a point. Otherwise, we have the forensic audit ready for review. Jim slid the master folder across the bench. The judge, a sharp, elderly woman with zero tolerance for fluff, pulled the binders toward her and began flipping through the tabbed sections. The courtroom went dead quiet except for the steady rustle of paper. She stopped at tab 4. Secret credit lines and fleet gas card misappropriation. Counsel, the judge said, looking over her half-moon glasses directly at Sarah's lawyer. Your client spent $4,000 at a resort in Key West on dates where she claimed to be attending an equipment seminar in Chicago. Sarah's lawyer cleared his throat, shuffling his notes. Your Honor, those expenses were open to interpretation regarding business development. Save it. The judge cut in coldly. This isn't business development. This is systematic asset dissipation. She turned her gaze directly to Sarah, whose posture collapsed by inches. The court views deliberate financial fraud during a marriage as a severe breach of fiduciary duty, the judge stated, her pen hovering over the emergency order. All joint accounts are frozen immediately. The respondent is barred from entering the commercial premises of Vance Marine Engineering, and full temporary custody of all business assets is awarded to the petitioner. I sat completely still. No smirk. No fist pump. Truth doesn't need to shout when the telemetry is clear. By the time the preliminary hearing adjourned, Sarah was sitting motionless at her table, her lawyer aggressively quiet beside her. The narrative she had built, that she could play the victim and split my life's work down the middle, had been obliterated in less than 40 minutes. The legal victory was absolute. But as I walked out of the courthouse back to my truck, my cell phone pinged with an unexpected message from Marcus, revealing what had just happened to Tyler and Sarah the moment they stepped off the courthouse steps. It took 8 months for the legal system to grind through the final paperwork, but the social and professional fallout was instantaneous. Relationships built in the dark rarely survive exposure to daylight. Once the court documents became public record, the dominoes fell fast. Tyler's business partner, Marcus, stripped Tyler of his shop operational rights based on the fraud evidence we shared. Tyler tried to set up a quick marine repair hustle with Sarah, but when dishonesty is your core foundation, you can't build anything that holds weight. Within 6 weeks, their temporary arrangement collapsed under the weight of mutual paranoia. When you know someone is comfortable lying to their spouse for nearly a year, you never trust them when they're sitting in the passenger seat of your own truck. They broke up before the final divorce decree was even drafted. The wider network of industry contacts drifted away from her, too. Not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. Nobody in commercial fleet management wants to work with a coordinator who leaves a trail of audited fraud in her wake. As for me, I didn't hold a party. I didn't celebrate her collapse. Taking pleasure in someone else's ruin is just empty noise, and I'd had enough noise to last a lifetime. I sold the large suburban house we had shared and moved into a smaller, industrial-style rental closer to the docks. It was clean, simple, and quiet. 3 rooms, concrete floors, a solid workbench in the garage, and a back patio where I could drink my morning coffee without listening to a lie. I re-established my daily routines. I hit the shop floor at 5 a.m., focused on high-precision engine rebuilds, cooked clean meals, and spent my weekends restoring an old diesel tender boat I'd bought at auction. There's something deeply grounding about working with physical parts that don't lie to you. If a valve is leaking, it's because the seal is worn, not because it's playing a game. Therapy helped clear out the residual carbon too. Not the dramatic, cinematic kind, just a straight-shooting specialist who reminded me that being betrayed doesn't mean you were weak. It just means you extended real trust to someone who was operating on bad faith. On a crisp October morning, 8 months after that initial Sunday phone call, Jim handed me the signed final decree. The business was 100% mine. The debt she incurred was assigned solely to her. The chapter was legally, financially, and operationally closed. I walked out into the cold morning air, took a deep breath, and felt something I hadn't felt in years: absolute weightlessness. I thought that was the end of the story, a clean break, a quiet life, and a prosperous shop. But 2 years later, an unexpected knock at my garage door brought the past slamming right back into my present, forcing me to make one final, definitive choice. In the 2 years following the final decree, my life didn't just recover, it recalibrated. When you remove a massive structural drain from your daily operations, your output skyrockets. Vance Marine Engineering doubled its service capacity within 18 months. I brought on 2 young, hungry mechanics who actually respected the craft, paid off the shop equipment early, and secured a long-term overhaul contract with the Regional Port Authority. And slowly, without forcing it, the rest of my life opened up. I met Elena through a mutual commercial supplier. She ran a precision machining shop 2 towns over. She wasn't loud. She wasn't trying to perform for anyone. She was sharp, direct, and grounded in reality. She'd gone through her own operational wreck years prior. Different details, same structural damage. That gave us an unspoken understanding that required 0 explanations. Our first date wasn't a showy production. Coffee at a dockside diner, followed by a walk along the breakwater. No masks. No high-pressure sales pitches. Just 2 people who knew the value of clear parameters, seeing if trust could be built, step by calibrated step. We took it slow, not out of fear, but because slow is how you build things that endure heavy weather. Then came the email. It arrived on a Tuesday night while I was sitting at my desk finishing up payroll. A 3-page message from Sarah. Long paragraphs of late-stage regret. Excuses framed as revelations. Reflections on how hard her life had become since the industry turned its back on her. And subtle pleas for a second chance to talk things through like old partners. I read it through once. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel satisfaction. I simply highlighted the message, clicked delete, and emptied the trash folder. Healing doesn't mean you engage with the person who set the fire. Sometimes, true strength is just complete, unyielding silence. The kind that protects your border without giving the past an inch of ground. 2 years to the day after my life split down the middle, I sat out on my back deck at sunset. A hot cup of coffee beside me, the quiet hum of the harbor in the distance, and Elena's truck pulled up in the driveway. If you're watching this right now, sitting in the quiet wreckage of your own sudden breakdown, listen to me clearly. You didn't cause their sabotage. You aren't defined by their failure of character. And you aren't broken just because you trusted someone who was operating on a lie. Some structural collapses happen so you can clear the rot out of the foundation and build it right the second time. The truth is going to hit like an impact wrench. The recovery will take time and discipline. But the life waiting for you on the other side, a life built on real ground with zero illusions, is worth every single step of the rebuild. Your first honest day begins the second you stop negotiating with the lie.